I'm Andrew Walsh, aka Bat Phantom, from the Operation Pug podcast, proud member of the Gonna Geek Network. Just like the show you're listening to now, the opinions expressed are those of each individual host. Check out all the other podcasts at GonnaGeekNetwork.com and get ready because geekiness begins in 3, 2, 1.
You are listening to the Starling Tribune, a podcast dedicated to the Arrow TV show.
I am the Green Arrow.
This podcast is not produced or maintained by the CW, Warner Brothers Television, CTV, or DC Comics. All characters, situations, and stories are the properties of Time Warner. I am the Oracle, and this is your Tribune.
Welcome back to Earth 2's favorite newspaper, the Starling Tribune, still in business. I am the chief editor, SP, and your other reporters for this episode number 203 of the Starling Tribune are Chris.
Give it time. I'll get through that crusty exterior.
I wasn't talking to you. And Michelle.
For the professor.
Definitely. We'll get more in depth into that as we go along. Everyone, this podcast is recorded on Thursday, July 12th, 2018 on our new night via geeks.live.
That's right, and this evening we'll be discussing Legends of Tomorrow, as well as news, interviews, articles, and announcements that have dropped in the last week that could and very well will impact future episodes of Legends, as well as the rest of the universe. That includes The Flash, Supergirl, Arrow, Vixen, Constantine, and who knows what else they're going to add.
If you're new to the show, thank you for searching us out on the internet and joining us. After the show, you can check out our content at GonnaGeek.com, where you can also find other geeky videos, podcasts, and articles.
Thanks, guys. Michelle, why don't you go ahead and break down the episode that we are reviewing tonight?
It is Crisis on Earth X Part 4. It's Season 3, Episode 8. It aired Tuesday, November 28, 2017. It's directed by Gregory Smith. Credits include 1 Riverdale, 2 Flash, 1 Supergirl, 4 Legends, and 6 Arrow. When it comes to writers, the story by was Mark Guggenheim, who's the showrunner of Arrow. Andrew Kreisberg is the executive producer of all the Arrowverse shows. And the teleplay was by Phil Klemmer, who's written 10 Legends, 3 Forever, and 12 Chuck. And Kido Shimizu, who's done 9 Legends, 11 Arrow, 1 Flash, and 7 of the Cape.
So we will get into the ratings, and these are the same day plus 7-day ratings for the 4 shows that were part of the crossover. It started with Supergirl Monday, the 27th of November, 2017, with a total rating of 4.43, and that was Crisis on Earth X Part 1. On Monday, the 27th, following Supergirl, you had Arrow in a special night for this particular crossover with Season 6, Episode 8, with a total number of viewers of 4.41 over the Live Plus 7-day. And on Tuesday, the 28th of November, Flash with the Part 3 had a total viewers of 4.64. And on Tuesday, following the Flash, Legends of Tomorrow, the episode that we're discussing tonight, Crisis on Earth X Part 4, which was Season 3, Episode 8, with a total rating of 4.62. Now, I know, guys, that these ratings do not count the CW site, the website that they can stream these shows on, which I know they packaged all 4 of these shows on their site, so you can go back and watch them on their site, and the numbers didn't account for any of that. And I'm sure a lot of people actually did, because this was a special event, and it flowed from the Supergirl all the way to Legends of Tomorrow. It was really cool, and I can see the ratings being closer to maybe 10 or 12 by the time this was done, if you count those actual streaming numbers. That's just my guess, because a lot of people actually wanted to go out and see it, and it was a free way to see it. All right. Before we get into the main theme of the episode, I want to bring up a slight issue here. Now, I watched this episode on Netflix tonight. Again, we have watched these all before, and we actually podcasted on in our early podcast, but we hadn't actually watched the episode in the order of the series that it was in. And in this particular case, we did. We watched the episode 7 of Legends of Tomorrow last week, and then this week or this episode this show, we're podcasting on episode 8, which is actual part 4. Guys, I got to admit, even though I had seen the 4-part crossover before, it was jarring going into this from last episode. What do you think, Michelle?
Ditto. If you are binging on Netflix, you go right into it, and there's no, hey, this is part 4 of a crossover. There is no, hey, this is what's gone on from parts 1, 2, and 3. It's just you push play, and that first scene of Stein being shot and the Nazis coming in is right there. And if you're just sitting there, it's like, what episode is this? I don't understand. I was surprised that there was just no other like signifiers, that there was nothing that says, hey, this is part 4.
Yeah, it's a problem for bingers. One of the guys I work with gets caught up when they're all on Netflix, and Legends was the first season to wrap. So he started binge watching Legends, and I was like, wait, where are you? And he goes, I'm like episode 6. I said, you might want to stop until the rest of the stuff is out to watch the crossover. He's like, what do you mean? I said, there's something that happens there that you don't have any background on that then impacts the rest of the show. So if you don't want to spoil the crossover or get the wrap up of it, you want to hold off. And the problem is Legends of Tomorrow wrapped like 7-8 weeks before everything else.
Yep. It was the first one out, and then the last one was Supergirl, which was part 1 of the crossover. So you couldn't watch the crossover until Supergirl got done in the middle of June.
Right, or you would just have to go and buy it for like $1.99 an episode from Amazon or something like that. I think that's what he ended up doing, because he's like, well, I don't want to wait, but I don't want to ruin the story. He goes, so I'll pay $6 and buy the other 3 episodes, watch them, and then be able to watch the episode as part of Netflix.
I guess
It was just really disappointing, though, because there is no way on Netflix to watch it all as one event.
Yeah, and if you consider what Chris did, although I don't know if you would have known to have done that. I think you would have gone from 7 to 8, and you'd be like, well, what happened? And you might not know it's interconnected with the other shows.
Well, I think the only way you might have known is I think the episode title was Crisis on Earth X Part 4. So if you're someone who looks at the titles, you would have gone, wait a second, where's the first few? But let's be honest, most people, when they're binging, it just rolls on to the next episode. Like, hey, I'm on the next one. This is good. So this was not, well, it's a total first world problem we have here, guys, because how many other shows really cross over 4 shows to do one event? This is a rarity. It's just there's no way with the way Netflix works to really prevent that from potentially spoiling the end for you.
I know. I just wish there was another way to do it. Like, just warn people, hey, you might want to go see these 3 episodes. Like, they should have, in the Netflix show that CW, Warner Brothers, whoever's producing it, that they actually put for Legends of Tomorrow or any of the other 3, they might have said you might want to go watch those 3 episodes first before you see this. It should have been like Sarah actually stating it, Katie Lotz stating it before they jumped into the actual episode. But I guess that's the only way they could do it, is actually put a special version of the episode on Netflix.
Yeah, which they weren't going to do. That costs money.
Yeah, well, they ended up getting more money because, as your friend did, went out and bought them. So I'm sure other people did as well. All right, so we talked about that. Now let's get into the overall theme of the episode. We've talked about the title of the episode, part 4 of the Crisis on Earth X event, but we haven't talked about what the Crisis on Earth X was. So Michelle, take it away.
Well, Barry and Iris is getting married, and of course, Nazis from Earth X invade. Our hero, yeah, of course. I mean, that's what happens at a superhero wedding. They can't go right. I mean, please, superheroes have a happy event, a day without anything big going on. No way. So we have our Nazis from Earth X that invade. We get the evil doppelgangers of Supergirl, Oliver, who was the Fuhrer, which is kind of creepy. We actually had a return of Tommy, which was interesting. And then we get the Citizen Cold version of Leo Snart. And it's just really interesting to watch. This is my favorite crossover that they've done, because they were really able to incorporate everybody and make it a really solid 4 hours. And this is the hour where everything comes together. As I said before, it starts with Martin Stein shot. He does get the lever pushed, and then everybody can go back to the regular dimension and get rid of the Nazis on our Earth.
So you mentioned something that I need to backtrack on a little bit of, yes, all the four casts, the main characters of all four shows were on this show, and in specifically this show, but there were some that you saw at the very beginning of episode 1 or part 1, and then you didn't see again until this part 4. So most of part 1 and then all of part 2, part 3, you had characters that weren't in it until part 4, and that was disappointing as we were watching it the first time. But this time around, if we're just watching part 4, it really didn't phase us because they were all there for part 4. Just want to point that out, that not all the casts were in all of the parts.
And then you've got Wally, who got shipped off in episode 1 and never came back.
Yeah.
That's one of the problems I have with the crossover. We'll talk about the other one. You know what? I just want to get the Stein Jax situation. Jax and Stein have to merge in order to get Stein back to our Earth, and Stein is badly injured. Gideon can't even do anything with him, which if Gideon can't cure you, then you know things are bad.
Yeah, because Gideon can cure just about everything. So yeah, the only thing keeping Stein alive was the merge. Like, he would have been dead there on Earth X if it wasn't for the merge.
And we had that scene where, Jax is basically acting like a human life support, and it's to the point where they both could die. And Cisco has that drug, and Stein is like, I'm old, I've had a full life, Jax, you need to live. And okay, who cried again? Because I cried again. This is like the 4th time I have seen this episode. I cried again. I'm going to admit it.
I didn't this time because I'm not a human. I'm a machine.
I was on the elliptical, so it was kind of hard for me to cry, but I did have a little misty in the eyes going. I had to, wipe my eyes clear and stuff like that, because I went to the fact that all of this podcast that we've done, episodes 1 through 7, we've known what happens with Martin Stein because we started after the crossover. And the first half of the season is just monumental to Victor Garber, who's playing Martin Stein. And this really is a way to let his character go. We talked about it before, that I think this was one of the best farewells in the entire Arrowverse of what they've done here with Martin Stein. The one regret I have about it, of course, is everybody that Martin took with him. I mean, he took Jax, he took his daughter, he took his grandkid, he took his wife. None of them will be on the show anymore because he, as a central character, is not here. So it was a big decision, not only for him, but for everybody else to do it. So that's the one little regret, but it does give some significance to this crossover as well. So got to take the good and the bad.
Well, it's part of this show, though, is the constant cast shuffle, it seems like. So a few people go out, a few new people come in. I mean, we've seen it, because remember, who are the only original cast members left? It's Mick, Sarah, and Ray. Everyone else is new.
Yeah, that's true.
That's what keeps it fresh. I mean, is the constant rotation. Now, this is a sad way to do it, but it continues that theme in Legends of pretty much almost anyone can get written off or moved off temporarily and then potentially come back because it's a time travel show. Just because Stein is dead now doesn't mean we won't see him again in some other way, shape, or form. Hint, hint, hint.
Are you wishing, or do you know something?
Yes.
Okay. It was a pivotal moment of the crossover. It was a pivotal moment of Legends of Tomorrow, and it was a pivotal moment within the Arrowverse. And I'm glad that they were able to accomplish it within the crossover, and it actually meant something. I mean, he did something with it. It wasn't a meaningless death. So I think this is as good as you're going to get in the Arrowverse.
True. And of course, as the last hour, this is the moment where we get the big group on the Wave Rider. We get the big group slow-mo walking in the street toward the big fight. I love the big epic fight. There was a lot of stuff going on. One of my favorite parts is still when Killer Frost, Amaya, and Zari zip over to the Nazi Wave Rider. It was just really cool just to see 3 women go over there, and because they have to disable the shields. And then, of course, we got the Supergirl saying the line, "General, care to step outside," to Overgirl, which was great because that's a Superman callback, which, that's awesome. Chris, did you have any favorite moments from this huge fight?
So I enjoyed that Supergirl moment. I enjoyed at the end of it when Nazi Supergirl was about to explode and whatnot, and Wells was like, "You need to go up and away," and I was like, okay, that's a cute line. I like it. Anytime we can reference something from the past DC universe, be it movies or TV shows, that puts a smile on my face. I mean, this was a pure popcorn cheese moment. It was a lot of fun because it's not very often, especially on TV, that you get to see like 15 superheroes all in one place, all using their powers at the same time and doing cool stuff. I wish they would use Barry a bit more because Wells ran off and then he was just kind of there, not doing much anymore. And you would think that a super speedster would kind of help turn the tide, especially against just foot soldiers. But who knows? I think Barry could have been far more effective, but I understand why they didn't, because everyone else gets their moments then.
Well, we had that speedster versus speedster fight, and Barry just let him go away again because Barry doesn't kill.
Right. I think what Chris is saying is after that moment happened, Barry could have re-engaged in the fight to help other people. I think that's what Chris was saying, right?
And for all intent, yeah, that's what I was meaning. But for all we know, since it was just common foot soldiers, it's just something in the background that they just didn't show on screen that Barry was there taking a bunch of folks out. But it would have been cool to see on screen. That's all.
What about USP?
Wow, just watching the fight in its entirety again was a cool moment because you had so many special effects going on. The one regret is we didn't have Firestorm in that because Martin Stein had already passed away. But we had everybody else, and they were in full effects going every which way. You did have the Speedster fight. You had the Supergirl Overgirl fight. You had the Green Arrow fight with the Fuhrer, and it was just amazing watching everything ongoing the entire time. It really was. I mean, even Wild Dog was kind of cool, saving a kid in the middle of everything. Another little regret, though, that I have about the fight is that there were casualties. And this was probably the most civilian casualties that we've probably seen in the Arrowverse for quite some time. I mean, of course, there was season 1 of Arrow where you had half a city go down. But, I mean, for the most part, you don't see that one-on-one civilian deaths. And we did see that. And it is probably real if this is going to happen for real. You don't have the Superman Man of Steel moment where it's like, oh, half of a big metropolitan city, it goes away and nobody's really hurt. So it did show that there were some effects. But the whole fight from tooth to tail was just amazing to watch, and I just sat there and enjoyed it. It was a spectacle. It was really cool, and I wish they could do more, but I realized this is a TV show and they have a budget, so this sort of thing is not going to happen that often. Plus, it was the cast of 4 shows coming together. I speculated when we first podcasted about this that I don't think we would see something like this again. We're lucky enough that we are going to get to see this again, but I don't even know if it's going to be this cool. This might be the coolest fight that would ever be in the Arrowverse.
From a production nightmare, I think Stephen Amell's talked about in interviews and stuff before. This is a nightmare for everyone involved. It's really cool for us, the viewers, but to cross over 4 shows and to try and get everyone to get that much work done in probably what takes them 6 days to shoot normally on a per episode.
I think it's 8 to 10 days. I think.
But combining like this, some of these guys were working massive hours because they were in all 4 parts, whereas some folks are like, sweet, I'm only in 2 episodes. I get a little downtime.
Or you have the episode before this where Sarah is in a coma because she is off filming the crossover because she was a big part of the entire crossover. Right. I love that moment where her and Alex is saying the awkward goodbye because in part 1, they end up having a little one-night stand, and it's great. Nothing like being able to pop over to a different dimension and have some, one night stand breakup sex, getting over somebody sex. It's good for Alex.
Exactly. And it was a hugging moment.
Yes, it was a hugging moment. And of course, the hour ends with this beautiful moment with Barry and Iris getting married, and they have these beautiful vows that they're, Barry is like, I don't need the paper anymore. I know exactly what I want to say. I remember the first time I saw you. And then Iris is like, I remember when I was a kid and I got scared and you came up and you did that routine with me when I was a little girl. And there's Diggle that Barry got, who vomited again because he's officiating. They're in that park. Beautiful. And then effing Felicity is like, hey, wait a minute. Can we also get married? And it's like, it still irritates me. I knew that moment was coming. It still irritates the F out of me. SP, I see you're shaking your head.
Yeah, I was thinking about it the whole time. I'm like, okay, here's the moment. Here it comes. Here it comes. I was just thinking how awkward it was. I think from a production standpoint, it might have been better if the two of them had decided that they wanted to get married, and then the four of them went to Jitters and had coffee and like, hey, we're going to get married. We decide we're going to get married. And they're like, yeah, we're still going to get married, but we're going to do it with the Justice of the Peace. And they could have had that moment of who could have done it. And then Barry could have gotten his buddy, Diggle, and they could have done it that way. And I guess it was just a matter of the goodbyes and those being the only four left in order to do it the way they did. And that's why the awkward moment came up, but it'll bug me for a very long time. And I'm wondering how this marriage is going to persist next season with the prison ongoing and the fact that she's basically on the run. So I don't know. We'll see how this all turns out. But I will say, listening to their vows, I'm a little bit more emboldened that they will stay together. Like at the end of the season, I'm like, oh, this is going to tear them apart. They're not going to stay together. But watching the wedding and what they said to each other while they're getting married, yeah. But yeah, still totally inappropriate.
It was totally shoehorned in, but we knew they're going to stay together. They got to keep the shippers happy. That's what this show has done. Arrow has done for years now. Let's be honest. But like I said it when we recorded this episode about the entire crossover. This is shoehorned in because it's the mandate from on high that this has to happen. But it's just a bummer because it ruins the moment between Barry and Iris, something that they've been building up to for weeks in The Flash as they've been talking about the wedding preparations and things like that. It didn't make much sense to shoehorn those two folks into it, but they did it, and the shippers were happy, and la-di-da-di-da. I don't care. I'm tired of some of the dumb relationship drama, and I think I said it on Starling Tribune for Arrow episodes. I was getting really tired of the Olicity stuff, and I kind of hope that him being in prison helps shake things up. We know they're not going to break them up, but...
Chris, let me ask you this. I know you're not a fan of the shipping and their relationships. If they would have done it differently, if they would have done it so that it wasn't such of a forced and awkward moment, if they would have built up to it, would you have cared for it more?
Yes, because honestly, this felt like a thumb in the eye to everyone that had reservations about it, because it's, hey, these two characters, Barry and Iris, who I don't mind because it makes sense. They've been building this up versus just kind of slapping them back together. Let's derail it with this. It honestly just kind of felt like a thumb in the eye to people who aren't really fans of the Olicity ship. It's, aha, look, we're going to sneak this in. Ha ha ha, we're so smart. And I was like, no, you're not. You ruined a great moment.
Yeah, there were a lot of Olicity fans that were upset that the wedding didn't happen on Arrow, that there wasn't even any sort of ceremony. It was just a reception.
Well, if you're a Flash fan and you're rewatching this on Netflix, just the Flash series, the wedding doesn't happen there either.
Right. That's because of the nature of this event. I mean, it just didn't feel right. It still doesn't feel right after all of this time. They could have done their own thing on their own episode. They had the big wedding reception. For all I care, they could have done it off screen and be like, hey, we were really inspired by what Barry and Iris did, and we decided we wanted to just get married on our own because it felt right. They didn't have to ruin that moment.
Yeah, because the crossover actually starts because Barry and Iris are getting married. That's where the event takes place. There's the night before, and everything's the crossover begins with Barry and Iris's wedding. It should have ended with Barry and Iris's wedding and just Barry and Iris.
Right, and remember, Oliver had been kind of hinting at saying that he wanted to get married, and she didn't, and Felicity didn't want to because of the life he was leading and things like that. So it was just turn on a dime because we fought Nazis together and you almost died. I want to get married to you now. And I was like, what? What? There should have been, if you wanted to do it, at least build back up to it a little bit, have her have the realization, but not in the middle of someone else's wedding ceremony. It irks me still.
Well, we got that out of our system again. I can't believe it still irks me as much as it did, but it does. SP, is there something else you want to talk about this episode, a highlight, anything?
It's kind of a highlight, but it's kind of a low light as well. The funeral was beautiful. It was amazing. It was a great send off to Martin Stein, the character, and I thought that they pulled it off really well. So once again, going back to Martin Stein, I think it was a great part of the crossover, including even the funeral. So Sarah said at one point in time, I'll cry at the funeral, I'll cry later. Ollie's like, are you sure? And she's like, I'm fine. And then they go off and that's it. And you're thinking, wow, that was kind of abrupt. But then you get to the funeral and you kind of understand where everybody's coming from because Martin had touched everybody.
Chris?
I enjoyed Leo and Mick's interactions this episode. That was fun. Especially Mick thinking he's the imaginary snart that's in his head. And he's like, no, I'm real. And it builds up nicely because we get a little bit of Leo coming up to and through the mid part of the season of Legends of Tomorrow. And the interaction between him and Mick, I have reason to believe, will just continue to be entertaining. I'm a Mick Rory fan, guys. I like him.
I think we all like him.
Yeah, I mean, it was great seeing Snart again. I like the fact that the evil Wave Rider was voiced by Susanna Thompson, who is Moira Queen. I thought that was a nice little, I know it's a small little moment, but I'm like going, Moira Queen was the voice of the evil Wave Rider. It's great. And just seeing, like I said, it was a great fight. I loved it. I loved everybody doing their thing. It was wonderfully choreographed, very action-packed. It was a good, solid ending to a good crossover. So next week, we are going to cover Season 3, Episode 9 of Legends of Tomorrow called Bebo, the God of War. It originally aired Tuesday, December 5th, 2017. The Legends investigate an anachronism in a Viking settlement in the New World and realize the Norsemen are worshiping an artifact as their god. It's directed by Kevin Mock and written by Grain Godfrey and James Egan.
I'm looking forward to getting back to the Bebo.
I love Bebo. Did you see the Comic-Con bags they showed for all the different CW shows? Like Flash is all Flash logo and characters from that. Legends Tomorrow is just Bebo. And I was like, oh my God, that's awesome. I want one.
I know.
Oh, as an actor on the show, I'd be a little miffed, but hey, how can you?
I think they're in on the joke on this one. I think everyone enjoys Bebo.
Oh, good. All right, so that's it for the episode talk, but now we're going to get into the news and live. Oh. Live from the Starling Tribune main news desk on floor 52 of the Starling Tribune Tower, it's the weekly news roundup with award-winning chief news anchor Michelle Ely. And now, Michelle Ely.
We have some Arrow news this week. Season 7 has begun production and the cast reunited. The Arrow writers' room tweeted out a photo of Stephen Amell, Emily Rickards, David Ramsey, and Echo Kellum celebrating the first table read of the season. Since this is a celebration, there was, of course, cake. This is a major season in the Arrowverse. It is the first season for our new showrunner, Beth Schwartz. The show is moving to Mondays, which is why our podcast air date has moved. And Stephen Amell has actually stated that he wants the writers to go all out and to write this as though this was the last season. It's not like he wants this to be the last season. He's just like, hey, pretend that this is it and go for it and write it like that. And I agree. I in fact actually wish all television shows would write as though it's a nice contained story. Yes, have a little hanging threads for next season, but wrap up the big thing.
Well, and also Stephen Amell's contract originally was for 7 seasons. I don't know if it was ever redone, but if his contract is done after 7 seasons, it could be a major issue getting him back for season 8. And of course, he's Green Arrow, so thus, really, Arrow? I mean, we talked about Diggle coming back as the Arrow, which could possibly work. Roy Harper is also in the mix now. So, I mean, it could go on, but I don't think Stephen Amell is going to be a part of it moving on. And that's just contractual and it's the way of things. So, yeah, I agree. Let's go out with a bang here. Let's not blow the ending.
Let's also be honest, though. If their ratings continue to be what they are, even on the CW, you don't survive long with those kind of ratings.
No,
Yeah.
but yeah, you have to ask yourself. I mean, we just podcast about the crossover. Does the crossover make up for it in terms of money for the CW? I don't know.
That's 1 week. That's 1 week where you get an advertising bump. You can't sell as many advertisements to someone if you're pulling a 0.9 in. It doesn't matter if 6 weeks ago you pulled a 4.2 because of the crossover. You pulled a 0.9.
Okay.
I mean, that's how I would look at it. So I'm trying to... I sound slightly cynical in this, I realize, but it's 7 seasons. 7 seasons is a hell of a run, no matter how you look at TV anymore, especially in today's climate. So I admire the thought of let's go out on a bang, because they might very well be going out at the end of this season just because it's 7 seasons, ratings are down, people are dropping off. It would sort of make sense, and then they could move on and do something else. Just because Arrow ends doesn't necessarily mean you have to be done with all those characters. You have the connected universe. You could move some of them to Legends. You could start a spin-off and just call Arsenal and have it be all about Roy or something like that. There's potential.
Well, Chris, we'll say it took us 6 seasons to be right about Quentin, so it might take us a couple seasons to be right about Arrow.
Okay, that's true. That's true. But there was no money there's no money on the line for Quentin's character.
Yeah, true.
I have to admit, I've been watching, Stephen Amell's been posting his workout videos on Instagram. And man, those workouts are tough. And to do that year after year, and he's not getting Hugh Jackman money or Chris Hemsworth money, that's got to take a toll on the body.
Yep.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, so I can see 7 seasons for him.
Think of part of the reason Hugh Jackman stopped as Wolverine is just how intense the workout had to be to get in that shape. And every time he came back for another movie, and I'm sure with Stephen Amell, every time he comes back for another season, he wants to be even that much more jacked for his appearance on screen. I mean, at one point, Hugh Jackman was working out with The Rock and getting workout tips from The Rock to get jacked. And if there's someone in Hollywood right now who knows how to be ripped, it's Dwayne The Rock Johnson.
For the next few years, and then it'll just get a little bit too old, too. I mean, The Rock is phenomenal. I'm not taking
He's a workout warrior, man.
Yeah. Yeah, but at some point in time, your body, no matter who you are, your body starts to break down. So.
Yes.
Yeah. So, Chris, you have some more Arrow news for us.
Right, so we know there's some new characters that have been teased for season 7. Well, there's some breakdowns, some hints at what these characters might be like, and if you read into it, we might be able to figure out which one very well could be Batwoman, who's supposed to be coming to Arrow this upcoming season. So there's 3... Sorry?
I said okay.
So there are 3 characters. Let's talk about first Dover, who is a male in his 30s to 40s.
That's Batwoman.
There you go. That's exactly it. Who is teased as a physically intimidating player, even though he might not be the brightest person in the room. Anyone who is in his presence will feel incredibly small. Whether or not Dover is a cover name for a DC character or not, he will be recurring this season. So I think it's fair to say, probably not actually Batgirl. It doesn't sound like a bigger DC character off the top of my head that I can think of, but there's potential it could be a bit player out of comics or something like that they roll in. Who knows? Next character, Leah. And for those of you listening, I'm doing air quotes with these names because that's all they provide us with. She is a 30-something woman in a world-class mercenary who is born to be a leader. Don't mess with this one because you see what Leah has in her toolbox of skills and you see why those are known all across the world.
that is actually the description of Batwoman.
Could be. Or it could be some person who was with the League at some point in time.
Yeah,
I'm not sure. I'm kind of leaning towards the last one, Angeline, who we're going to talk about as potentially being Batwoman. She may be, according to the article, she's someone we might want to pay greater attention to. She's described as a diverse woman in her 30s, a fierce fighter despite her smaller stature. Not only is she experienced in stealth, Angeline is able to wipe out buildings filled with foes all by herself before she is gone like a ghost. It will be made very clear that Angeline thinks incredibly highly of her work. So the stealthy aspect, which is something you think of with the Bat family, has me going, I think this Angeline description might be who we're getting as Batwoman.
I could see that, but as somebody who's read the Batwoman comics lately in the Rebirth universe, the description B better fits than C, but you're totally right about the stealth stuff. That is a Bat thing through and through, so could be C.
I hope that's the case, because that's the fun stuff to show on screen, is how you pull off some of that stealth stuff. Look at some of the stuff Nolan did. Look at some of the stuff they pulled off even in the Justice League movie with playing with stealth and shadows and things like that. It could be cool.
And our last bit of news is Legends of Tomorrow. Legends has started filming season 4. Yay! The season 4 premiere of the series will be officially titled The Virgin Gary.
Yes!
I love Gary.
Gary.
The episode's title was first announced through a tweet from Legends consulting producer Mark Guggenheim.
All right, Michelle, Chris, gotta ask you, who do you like better, Gary or Sugar Bear from Deadpool 2?
Gary.
Yeah, probably Gary.
Ah, all right.
Hey, Gary last was seen with Constantine, and anyone who hangs out with Constantine is going to pick up some skills. So,
at least you hope.
Hope so.
Constantine's a miracle worker, but who knows?
I love Gary. And I love Constantine. So it seems really interesting. There was also another photo released through someone's Instagram, I think Brandon Rouse. They're dressed in hippy dippy 60s clothing. So we might have a episode take place in, the season of love or whatever. I wasn't alive then. I don't know what they called it, but sounds like fun. So that is the news for this week. Now, we are part of a bigger podcasting network. Chris, what is one of the podcasts that we have?
That's right, Michelle. We are part of a bigger network. There's 25 plus shows, so we can't tell you guys about all of the shows, but we like to give you a taste of another show each week and say, hey, you guys might want to check this one out. This is one of my favorite ones. I got to guest host on it recently. Episode 82 of the Digital Soup podcast, entitled Goosebusters. On today's episode, the guys discuss smart bandages, data security with fitness apps, and Captain Marvel. They also play a game. They also might play a game of movie quote madness and decide who to recast in some of their favorite films. Who are you going to call? Goosebusters. So guys, go check out the Digital Soup podcast and all the other shows on the Gonna Geek Network by heading on over to gonnageek.com. Click on the network button and there is a wide variety of shows you can go check out. I guarantee you are going to find something you like when you head on over that way. But looking at the time, it is time for us to start wrapping up this live show. So a big thank you to any of the live listeners who participated in our chat room over at geeks.live, but also to anyone who downloads the audio replay from starlingtribune.com or catches the video replay over on youtube.com/gonnageek.
If you happen to have an Amazon device, you can enable our podcast as a skill. Just say the activation word, which is usually the A word, and enable Starling Tribune, and you will be able to hear our podcast. And also remember, you can always catch us live as we record at www.geeks.live at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, also known as 4:30 p.m. Pacific, on Thursdays now.
We would love to hear from you. We are the Starling Tribune on Facebook and Instagram, at Starling Tribune on Twitter, and you can call us at 612-888-CAVE. That's 612-888-2283. Well, this brings us to the end of another great episode. Any last words before we sign off? At Stargate Pioneer.
Hashtag thank you, Victor Garber.
at the Chris Farrell.
Hashtag, did you bring beers?
And I am at Michelle Ely signing off with hashtag, best friends don't ruin weddings. Oracle, I think we're done here.
This was the Starling Tribune. You can leave us feedback at gonnageek.com or check out our archive at starlingtribune.com. Visit gonnageek.com for more podcasts. Music by Kevin MacLeod can be found at incompetech.com. This podcast is not produced or maintained by the CW, Warner Brothers Television, CTV, or DC Comics. All characters, stories, and situations are the property of Time Warner. No infringement is intended. We will see you for the next episode of CW's Arrow.